Hi there. The first 2 weeks are already over. What has he been up to? Yes. Last 2 weeks I've been working on the storyboard, which is in front of me right here. Let me first tell you a little bit about the idea. The idea had started with something that Joe Rogan once said. I don't know if it was a joke or something he mentioned in his podcast. Is that we live on Earth, and which is actually this like tiny speck of dust in this bigger universe, and that we're never really aware of that fact, of that bigger world out there, basically. And I thought it was really interesting, and it got me thinking of, we don't really see it, and that's because we live in these cities, towns with a lot of light, with street lights, with greenhouses, with all kinds of light sources that basically create light pollution and prevent us from seeing the stars. And the idea for the film is to create this character who comes into a city and starts systematically killing off the light sources to actually show the people who live there that there is this bigger world out there. So that's a starting point, and that's what I used as input for creating my first storyboard. So let's have a look at that now. Yes, so for the storyboard, the initial storyboard, I constrained myself to 9 frames just to keep it concise and to have just a quick beginning, middle, and an end, get a first idea of how that could work out. So I wrote it out first, what needs to happen, and then I made some simple sketches. So in the beginning, we start with some views from the solar system, maybe the Milky Way, a black hole is what I sketched here. We have the introduction of the character, which I didn't know yet how I was gonna tackle that when I was sketching this out. Then we see the character over here who sees a city in the distance, sees the light pollution, sees the stars fading. And then we cut basically to the city where it's frantic, there's a lot of light, there's bustling, there's a lot of activity. Then we cut back to the character, and he has this expression of, now I have to do something about this. So he goes into the city, and here I have a scene maybe in a coffee shop where he turns down the lights of the machines, then slowly maybe the lights in the coffee shop, and goes on from that. So then he starts to get bigger and bigger, like the lights he shuts down, maybe the street lights, and people start to catch on that he is causing this. So here I had the idea of maybe a fight or a chase scene, and then in the end they chase him into a corner, like you can see here, all the people here, he's standing there, and in the end he turns the last lights that are still on, turns them off, the artificial lights, and then it's just the stars that are out there, and they come into view, and we see somewhere here a person looking up. So that's when he has achieved his goal, basically. So that's how I worked that out. Now that we have this rough outline, a very rough outline, just an idea of the beginning and the end, I want to work this out further and figure out what the story is going to be about, what's the mood that fits the story, what type of message do I want to convey. And to get a better grasp of this, I'm using this book, Framed Ink, Drawing and Composition for Visual Storytellers. And what this book is all about is how to create clear messages with your frames, with the images that you're showing. Where do you want people to look first? What do you want them to think? What do you want them to feel? Really try to figure out what you're telling people with the images that you draw. So that's a really good starting point to actually deepen the storyboard and to create more telling images. So let's have a look at what I've made so far. This first thumbnail that you're seeing here is kind of just a rough first sketch to get an idea. It's just in black and white, just to get an idea of what the purpose of the frame is. And for this one, for example, it's drawing your eye from the top right to the left to that little dot on the screen, which is actually, as I can reveal now, it's gonna be the Earth. So we have Jupiter, then we have Mars, and then we have the Earth and the Moon all the way in the back. So the idea of this thumbnail is to have you think about, where do I want the people to watch, what do I want to be the purpose of this frame. So the first one again is these planets, and then we move on to the introduction of the character. He's gonna emerge from, we're not gonna show him entirely at first, obviously you want to keep a little bit of a mystery. And then we're gonna show him from the side. Again, you don't see him in full yet. He sees the city, this very bright city in the background, and the stars. He sees the stars fading, basically. And this is subjective for the film to kill all that light. And what I want to do then is cut to the city, just show that it's frantic, show that there's a lot of light, there's a lot of activity, and to show that contrast, because he's still in, maybe it's the woods, he's still at a distance where it's quiet, and he actually wants to create that in the city as well. So then we move on. We see the character in full. He's in the woods, like I drew him now. Maybe that's gonna change, but for now he's in the woods. Then he sort of does this big sigh, like, okay, let's get going. Let's start with my mission, basically. The next frame, I have him in, like, maybe it's a coffee place. Maybe the scene will change, obviously, very early in the process. But maybe he gets a coffee and then he starts playing, shutting down first the coffee machine, like the lights turn down, then he goes for the lighting in the coffee place. And I visualize that over here where he's looking at the coffee machine, and he maybe snaps his fingers, maybe he points at, maybe he winks at it, maybe he has a spell like in Harry Potter, and he turns down that light. So that's where he starts. And then that escalates, obviously, to the point where people are catching on. Like, he is turning down the lights, and then they actually start chasing him, and he has to try to get away, which eventually leads him to being backed into a corner, like you can see over here. And he shuts there's only lights in the apartments left, and he shuts all of that off, so the screen cuts to black. And then slowly from that darkness, like we talked about in the beginning, the universe, like the stars and the Milky Way, start to show up, and we see this person, this woman, looking up and seeing the universe coming into the city, basically. So that's those first 9 frames worked out, and as you can see, this is already a lot more telling than the first sketches that I did on paper. And this is just to get a feel, an idea of what could be some scenes, what those scenes could be about. And when I'm drawing these, I really start to get more and more ideas of what the message and the mood should be, which is exactly the objective. So that's what I've been up to the last 2 weeks, working out these 9 images, working out the storyboard. And what I'm going to do for the next 2 weeks is flesh it a little bit out, like elaborate on it, make maybe 18 images in total. Some scenes might go out, like the coffee place, or I don't know, some things will change probably. So make 18 or maybe 27 frames, so that I get a better idea of the storyboard. And that's actually going to wrap up the first month, and that's actually going to wrap up today. See you again in 2 weeks. Okay, let's run that one again. Let's make it a separate side.